Have you ever wondered what those car acronyms and abbreviations you see on the rear end of cars, what they actually mean? Or maybe your friend told you to get an EV or a PHEV and you just laughed about it without saying anything because you don't actually know what they mean. And you're curious to know, you just want to know because you don't want anybody come flexing on you with those acronyms. And if that's you, then quest no more, because I am Meno and this is my YouTube channel, and in this video I'm going to be telling you the full meaning of those acronyms and as well as their function. And with that said, let's get started. And now, starting off alphabetically with the number 1, we have the ABS, which stands for anti-lock braking system, which is a system that prevents the wheel from completely locking when the brakes are applied to help the car stay away from collisions or to skid away from collisions. And next up is the AC or A/C, which means air conditioning. And this one is pretty much self-explanatory because everyone knows what it means, but for those who don't still know, air conditioning is a system in your car that conditions your air in the vehicle to match your preferred temperature. And next up we have the ACC, which means accessories, but in new cars it refers to adaptive cruise control, which is a system that uses radar or laser sensors to modulate speed such that your vehicle remains at a predetermined distance from the vehicle ahead of you. Next up we have the AEB, which stands for adaptive emergency braking. It's a safety feature that automatically applies the brakes for you when it detects an object in your path. And next up we have AEV, which stands for all electric vehicle, which is a vehicle that is entirely powered by electricity. Simple. And next up we have A/T, which means automatic transmission. Next up we have the AUX, or you can say AUX, which means auxiliary, but in most cases it refers to the auxiliary port for an external audio device. Next up we have AWD, which stands for all-wheel drive. In contrast to four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive is a drivetrain in which any wheel or combination of wheels can receive power from the transmission. Next up we have the BEV, which stands for battery electric vehicle, which is an electric vehicle that draws its current from a battery. Next up we have BHP, which stands for brake horsepower, which is the standard unit to designate power in the US. Alright, now we have BMW, and it stands for, Bayakshan Motorwen Worker. I repeat, Bayakshan Motorwen Worker. Or in English, it means Bavarian Motor Works. I repeat, Bavarian Motor Works in English. You get it? If you don't get it, forget about it. And now, the most feared light to ever pop up on your dashboard, and I'm talking about CEL, which stands for check engine light. And now a lot of car guys are going to know this one, but for those who don't know, check engine light is the engine symbol that illuminates when you have an engine issue and it pops up on your dash, and I mean your instrument cluster. Next up we have CO and CO2. A lot of chemistry students are going to know this one, but for those who don't know, CO stands for carbon monoxide and CO2 stands for carbon dioxide, and both are emitted when you burn fuel. Next up we have the CVT, which stands for continuously variable transmission. This is a type of transmission that is very different from the manual and the automatic transmission that has limited fixed gear that you can drive in. On the other hand, the CVT has two pulleys that can effectively change diameters, and they are connected by a very specially designed belt, which means there is an infinite number of ratios between the highest and the lowest ratio. Next up we have the DFI, which stands for direct fuel injection. This is an engine in which fuel is directly injected into the engine cylinders. Next up, we have DOHC, which stands for double overhead cam. This is an engine that has two separate camshafts for the intake and the exhaust valves. Next up, we have the DPF, which stands for diesel particulate filter. This is a device that burns off emission particles in diesel exhaust. You can think of it as a diesel catalyst converter. Next up, we have the DRL, which stands for daytime running light. So these are the front lights that are illuminated anytime the engine is running. And next up, we have the EBC, which stands for electronic brake control. So this is a system that attaches to and sends signal through the electric hookup from the vehicle to a towed trailer, whereby the trailer's brakes is recruited. And next up, we have the EBD, which stands for electronic brake distribution. And this is a system that manipulates the brake force applied to each wheels for more effective stopping. Next up, we have the ECU, and this is popularly known among tuners and those people that are into tuning their cars. So it stands for electronic control unit, and this is a device that regulates all aspects of engine variable controls, like it regulates the amount of fuel that goes into the engine cylinder, it regulates the spark plug timings, it regulates the amount of air that goes into the engine, it regulates the emissions, like it regulates everything that makes the engine to make as much power and run as smooth as possible. Next up, we have the EGR, which stands for exhaust gas recirculation. This is a system that routes some of the exhaust gases back into the intake to reduce emissions. Next up, we have the EPS, which stands for electric power steering. So this is a system of steering that relies on servos to assist in the turning of the wheels. Next up, we have the ESC, which stands for electronic stability control, and this is a system that can apply brakes and control power to each wheels to keep the vehicle going in the intended driver's direction, even in the case of limited traction, but it limits the phone, so there's always the button to turn it off in case you want to go. Next up, we have the EV, which stands for electric vehicles. So this is any vehicle that is powered at least partially by an electric motor. So for example, are the all electric vehicles, the battery electric vehicles, the fuel cell electric vehicles, and the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And now we have the fcev, which stands for fuel cell electric vehicle. So this is an all electric vehicle that stores power as compressed hydrogen. It extracts this power by combining the hydrogen with atmospheric oxygen inside the fuel cell, thereby creating electric current. Since it combines hydrogen and oxygen, the only emissions are water and air. And now we have the FWD, which stands for front wheel drive, and this is a drivetrain in which power is transmitted solely to the two front wheels. Next up, we have the GPS, which stands for Global Positioning System. So this is a system that tells you your position in the globe, and it helps to direct your car navigation system. And now we have the GVW, which stands for Gross Vehicle Weight, and this is the maximum recommended weight of a vehicle when it's fully loaded. And next up, we have ICE or ICE, and it stands for Internal Combustion Engine, and it refers to the fuel and diesel engine, and they both run on petroleum. And next up, we have kph, which stands for kilometers per hour, and it's a unit of measurement of speed expressing the numbers of kilometers traveled in 1 hour. And next up, we have the LDES, which stands for Lane Departure Avoidance System, which is a modern system that helps assist in staying within your lane. Next up, we have the LED, which stands for Light Emitting Diode, which is a modern system of lighting that requires a lot less energy to give out better lighting, and it lasts much longer than the conventional bulbs. And now we have the LSD, which stands for Limited Slip Differential, which is a device that regulates the power sent to each wheel to minimize wheel spin. Next up, we have the MPG, which stands for miles per gallon, and this is a standard unit of measuring fuel efficiency in the US, and many other countries uses miles per liter. Next up, we have the MPV, which stands for multi-purpose vehicle, and this is a crossover vehicle maximized for space and utility. Next up, we have NA, which stands for naturally aspirated, which is a vehicle that has no forced induction, no turbochargers, no superchargers, no compressed air, just the engine pulling air from the atmosphere. Next up, we have the OBD, which stands for onboard diagnostics, and this is an interface whereby the vehicle's computer can be accessed for diagnosis of any engine attributes, running conditions, or any issues. Next up, we have the OD, which stands for overdrive, and these are the gears in a gearbox that transmit to the drive shaft a speed that is greater than the engine speed, which means you can drive at a high speed while maintaining a low revving engine. Next up, we have the OEM, which stands for original equipment manufacturers, and these are the part suppliers that manufacture the parts originally for a particular car as opposed to aftermarket suppliers. And next up, we have the PCV, which stands for positive crankcase ventilation, and this is a one-way valve that releases gas that slips around the pistons into the crankcase. Next up, we have the PHEV, which stands for plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, which is a vehicle powered by both an electric motor and an internal combustion engine, and the onboard batteries can be charged by the engine or an external charger. Next up, we have RPM, which stands for revolution per minute, and this is the unit used in measuring the speed of rotation of the crankshaft. And next up, we have RWD, which stands for rear wheel drive, and this is a drivetrain in which the power is transmitted solely to the two rear wheels. Next up, we have the SRS, which stands for supplemental restraint system, which are simply the airbags. Next up, we have SUV, which stands for Sports Utility Vehicle, which is a passenger vehicle often based on a truck chassis combining the room of a wagon or a van with the ground clearance of a truck. And next up, we have the TCS, which stands for Traction Control System, which is a system that monitors and prevents wheel slippage for increased traction. Next up, we have the TPMS, which stands for Tire Pressure Monitoring System, which is a system that alerts you when a tire has below recommended air pressure. And next up, we have ULEV, and this one is pretty much self-explanatory, which stands for Ultra Low Emission Vehicle. And last but not the least, we have VIN, or VIN number, and this stands for Vehicle Identification Number, and these are the serial number of a particular vehicle, and it can be found on the chassis, a tag in the lower left corner of the windshield, a plate on the B pillar, and on the car's title. And that is all we have for this video. And please note, these are not the only car acronyms and abbreviation there is. The list goes on and on, but this is the ones that you are most likely going to hear from someone, and these are the most common ones. And these are the ones I've gathered for you guys. So if you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends and family if you think they're going to like it. And with that said, thank you for watching, peace out, and stay safe.